When there are repairs being done on the Crannog Bridge, there are quite a few steps and most of them are critical. The need for repairs occur when the older logs start to rot. If this happens to both the horizontal and the upright timbers, and they are all that is holding the bridge up, it would eventually become unsafe. What we do to repair the bridge is to install a new horizontal timber along the full length of the walkway, and this is supported by new upright timbers. Many things need to be pre-planned, such as the angles at which the timbers will be floated in from and how to manoeuvre them into place. Also, the assessing of possible problems is important as well. The on-the-job improvisation that happens is critical, but luckily there is not too much of that. Something else to be pre-planned is the order of operations. In actual fact, the repair was done backwards, so the horizontals were put in place before the uprights. Because our timber delivery arrived at the front of the Crannog Centre, we had to move the logs to the right location. The uprights were debarked and floated around the Crannog, while the smaller timbers were carried to a space beside the Crannog Bridge. The next step was to dismantle the walkway of the bridge to allow access to the underside. We then needed to set up scaffolding to enable us to use chain hoists. These gave us a mechanical advantage and allowed the heavy timbers to be lifted easily and manoeuvred into position with accuracy. As the scaffolding needed to be set up above the water, scaffolding boards were extended off the edges of the bridge to allow the scaffolding to rest on them. We then set up a line of boards down the middle so we didn't have to cautiously avoid the large gaps that are covered by the walkway. There was also scaffolding under the bridge in order to rest the long horizontal timbers on while we were putting them in place. It would have been impractical to get a timber long enough to span the full length of the bridge, so we used two half-length timbers and joined them with a carpenter's joint and a dowel. Once the two timbers were joined and secured by chain hoists in the correct position, the next step was to support it permanently with upright timbers. To prepare the uprights, a pointed tip is cut into the thinner end of the upright. This is to assist it when it is twisted into the loch bed. We need to ensure that the pointed end is made at what would have been the top of the tree, because if it was the other way around, water would be drawn in and the timber would begin to sprout branches and leaves. Once a tip is cut, it is timber hitched and turned 180 degrees so they are facing the right way. It is then floated out towards the bridge. This is the point where all the planning comes together, as they need to be passed through the gaps that were spotted for them and manoeuvred into place. Because of the planning and assessing, we foresaw that one of the uprights would be blocked by part of the bridge and it would have to be cut. If it had been a critical structural joint, it could not have been cut, and this is why planning is important. Next, we lowered the hoist until the tip was touching the loch bed. Then a large stick was secured to it to allow it to be twisted. We chainsawed a groove in the flat top of the upright to allow the stick to sit in without slipping. In the Iron Age, they would have secured the stick to the side of the upright with a tight square lacing knot, but this could still be liable to slip. It was then cut to the right length of the horizontal timber it would be supporting. For this, we used a template to ensure that the log was straight around the circumference and to ensure it was at the correct height to fit under the horizontal. A wooden dowel was used to secure it in place. Then, the last few steps were repeated for each upright installed. This year, the walkway surface logs were replaced as they were beginning to look a little rotten. Although modern tools were used, as they made the job faster and potentially required less people working, our maintenance team made sure that only things holding the bridge up once they were finished would not have looked out of place 2,500 years ago.